These days, pro almost always means more expensive with maybe just a few more features. But for me, that's not what it's about. The product needs to be durable and have longevity. It needs to be able to be customized, and most importantly, it needs to produce great results.
All right.
You know, money can buy you a lot of things, but if it doesn't check those boxes, it ain't no pro to me. So, are either one of these brand new action cameras worthy of their pro names? And if so, who is the most pro of them all? I'm Becca. Welcome back to my channel where we take tech outside. Let's get to the bottom of this. Let's start with the new Insta360 Ace Pro 2 and some facts, since Insta360's marketing has historically been shady. Insta360 has provided me with this review unit, but they have not told me what I can and cannot say.
The company has never paid me any money, but especially not for this review. Woo.
And they will not be watching this video before any of you do. It's just that you can't really buy a review around here. And with that, onto the camera. The first day I spent using this camera, I was comparing it to the previous Ace Pro, and I was having a bit of trouble spotting a difference between the footage from them. It's like maybe a little brighter here and definitely a bit brighter there. And okay, these lighting conditions aren't perfect, but why does this footage just not look great? So I asked myself the quintessential question. What am I doing wrong? I then checked all of my settings, H.265, bitrate high, and thought maybe I just needed more light. So as soon as I saw a bit of sunlight, I rushed outside. The sun is shining, it is super bright outside. And again, not a huge difference between the images, but certainly better handling of highlights and a slightly sharper image.
Okay, it does not get brighter than this, so I don't know.
Then I took it out in the dark. And again, slightly better handling of highlights and certainly more saturation, but throughout all of this, I learned that the differences this year aren't as much in the footage as they are in the handling. So the big news this year is that Insta360 has managed to pack 2 chips in the Ace Pro 2. One is what the company calls a pro imaging chip for noise reduction and image processing, and the other is what the company calls an AI chip for smooth performance and further image processing. Marketing jargon aside, this should equate to better image quality without any trade-offs. And although shooting 4K 24 frames per second didn't yield wildly different results for me, there are a few things this camera can do now that it couldn't do before because of these 2 chips.
That morning light on the creek? Are you kidding me with the falling leaves and the frost?
Mainly 8K 30 frames per second filming abilities, up from 8K 24 on the Ace Pro, not so big of a deal, but also 4K 60 frames per second pure video abilities, a bigger deal. Pure video is basically night mode that aims to improve low light footage by making it a bit brighter and smoothing out grain. And while stabilization can be a bit wonky in this mode, the difference between having pure video on and off are noticeable. With it off, it's dark as hell. And with it on, you get far more detail, saturation, and just overall a cleaner image. But again, there's not a huge difference between pure video on the Ace Pro versus the Ace Pro 2. But a difference that you will notice between these 2 cams is that the Ace Pro 2 just works quicker. And nowhere is that more obvious than when double tapping to zoom. This action takes a little bit of time on the Pro 2, but it took a lot of time on the Pro. Insta360 calls this 2x punch-in clarity zoom, and internally the camera switches from binning 4 pixels on the 8K sensor to using all 4 pixels separately on a 4K crop of the sensor. You'll also notice that this camera is ready to begin shooting clips faster after saving the previous one. None of this slowness is a deal breaker on the Ace Pro, but the Ace Pro 2 certainly does do everything faster. But if reporting on action cams has taught me anything, it's that chip upgrades usually play a larger role in what is to come. And then the last thing that is coming to this camera is a new voice enhancement feature and a battery endurance mode. The battery endurance mode limits features like gesture control, AI highlight assist, pre-recording, in order to provide 50% more battery life. And then that new voice enhancement feature is supposed to prioritize voices and bring them to the front. But my experience of this has not been great. I took this camera hiking last weekend, and the whole time I had that feature on, and, well, listen for yourself.
You know there's something there. You know there's actually a lot out there.
Just not today, you know?
Just not when we're here.
Otherwise, this generally feels like the same camera that we saw last year, with some new chips that open a few more doors, but mostly just make everything work a little bit quicker. And much like last year, this camera will always look best in great light, and still struggle with noise in anything but sunshine. But speaking of sunshine, the sun is finally shining on my Patreon. I'm so sorry. So there's the 5 and the 10 option. Both get you the same things, but it sort of sets up a pay what you wish situation. And every week on Fridays, I put out what is basically a newsletter. It's everything I saw, listened to, watched, and thought about all week in the tech space. There's also behind the scenes journals of every video I make that go more into depth about the process of making the videos or what didn't make it in the final cut. There's also a chat where I hope that you'll introduce yourself, and I basically just get to ask you questions about things that are on my mind. And then lastly, once a month, I'm going to have a chat, sort of like a podcast, but I'm kind of learning how to podcast. So thank you for being along that journey with folks that I really admire. And I'm filming one of those this week, and I'm very excited to show you that next week. So for those who have been asking how they can join me or support me, this is the best way. I appreciate you so much. And yeah, thanks for pushing me to get that off the ground. Anyway, back to the cameras. I already reviewed DJI's Action 5 Pro when it launched a month ago, and I'll link that video if you're interested in hearing more about just this camera. And since then, my thoughts haven't really changed. I'm still head over heels for this battery charging pack. I think its magnetic mount is too finicky, and the camera's night mode is really impressive, and its largest upgrade over last year's model. But I'm excited to compare it to the Ace Pro 2 because only one can take the Pro crown. Protect this at all costs. What are we thinking? And at the top of this video, I talked about what makes something pro. It's really never about the price for me. It's about it being durable, having longevity. It's about it being able to be customized. But most importantly, it's about it being able to produce great results. Let's start with durability. Both these cameras have fully gotten the Becca treatment, tossed in and out of bags, thrown in all sorts of water, mounted on cars and bikes. I would never go out of my way to harm a piece of gear, but I rarely go out of my way to treat gear as anything but a tool. And these are action cams. They are made to be tossed around, and the good news is they've both held up just fine in my few weeks of testing. They have of course had equal number of lens cleanings, but no scratches or marks really at all. And if that were to happen, both these cameras have removable lens guards for easy replacements. But when it comes to customization, there are a few differences. Let's start with the hardware and mounting, where Insta360 takes the win. A few folks thought I was too tough on DJI's magnetic mount when I said it's frustrating to use, but when every other camera's mount is so easy to use, DJI's really feels annoying. For example, you can only mount this camera one way on its magnetic mount, meaning that if you have it mounted to a bike, you have to turn the whole mount around in order to rotate the camera. While with the Insta360, you can just flip the camera right around. It sounds small, but it really makes using the action cam mounts easier. Then, the Insta360 has a great articulating screen. I find myself always having the screen at some sort of angle. And even though the DJI has the front-facing screen for framing yourself, a larger screen is always better. Internally though, while the Insta360 has many more shooting modes, including a dashcam mode, DJI has one crucial pro spec: 10-bit color, over just 8-bit in the Insta360. An 8-bit color system uses 8 bits to represent red, green, and blue, whilst in a 10-bit system uses 10. And although that doesn't sound like a lot, when it comes to coloring footage, it makes a large difference. For social media or straight out of cam work, this isn't gonna make a difference. But if you're a pro who needs to match footage between systems, I mean, there's no doubt you should go with the DJI cam. It's far more pro. But the most important part of a pro piece of gear is its ability to produce great results. And if you set both these cameras to 4K, 24 frames per second, and put them in auto, you will be pixel peeping to find a difference. And some folks might say, hey Becca, auto isn't very pro. And you're right, but that kind of brings me to my last point. I don't think either of these cameras are really made for professionals. Instead, they're made for folks who want something that's gonna go underwater on vacation, something that's small that they can just always be thrown into their bag, or something that they don't really care about. They can mount to a front of a car or, the front of a mountain bike. And for those folks, here are the things that I think might sway you to pick one camera or the other. And if I've missed something, please add it down to the comments. I'm sure there are folks who would love to know every little bit of this camera, and you might know something that I don't, or haven't experienced with something that I haven't. So please add it down below. But anyway, here's my list. The Osmo Action 5 Pro is smaller, lighter, and comes with a slightly larger battery capacity. Plus, you can buy this great charging case that has my whole heart. This camera is also $50 cheaper, and it has built-in storage, which will absolutely save the day when you inevitably forget to pack an SD card. The Ace Pro 2 is a bit larger than the Action 5 Pro, but it has that amazing flipping screen that gives you a much better front-facing view. It can also take 50 megapixel photos and film in 8K, which can provide slightly better detail if you're going to be cropping in. Both cameras have removable lens guards, quick release mounts, and both can produce great images. Okay, but I did promise you that I would pick a winner of the Pro race, and without a doubt, it is the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro, simply because of its 10-bit color. Pros know that matching footage is both the biggest pain in the ass, but an inevitable part of the job, and you'll just be able to do that easier with this cam. It's also $50 cheaper. That being said, 8K and 50 megapixels is nice, certainly on paper and kind of in practice. And you definitely can't go wrong with either one of these cameras. They're both great action cams that are certainly going to be able to take a beating, as I've shown them. Anyway, I'm Becca. Thank you so much for joining me. If you disagree with me, let me know down below. As always, a subscribe would mean the world. I appreciate you so much. I'll see you in the next one.